Gather round, children, long have to wait. There'll be fun and adventure for all. Story time with Cait. A world of imagination is there for you to take. All you gotta do is listen. It's story time with Cait. It's story time with Cait.
Boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Storytime with Cait. That's me. Well, I'm still here on Hungry Moon Farm with Farmer Dave. Say hi, Dave.
Hi, kids.
Today I'm going to be reading Pollinating Your Toolbox, written by Sheffer, illustrated by Duff Lueder. And if you want to buy your very own copy of this book, all you need to do is go to Amazon.com. Type in Pollinating Your Toolbox. Only with your parents' permission, kids. Dave, I was thinking that since we're going to be talking about tools and toolboxes, if maybe you could talk to us a little bit about some of your tools and what you use them for and, just...
Well, here on the farm, there's all kinds of things we need. But I always start with safety. You put these on so that if you're running equipment, you don't hurt your ears. That's very important. We also have these are bolt cutters. I use them for fixing fences and all kinds of things. We have trowels, that's for out in the fields, as well as this. Hammers, saws, paintbrushes. A lot of tools to run a farm, I can tell you that.
Wow, these really do work. I did not hear a word you said.
Well, with that, I'm going to go.
And now, let's get to reading. Pollinating Your Toolbox, written by Sheffer, illustrated by Duff Lueder. Marci and her foster brother, Greg, heard buzzing noises coming from a small building. "What is your dad doing there?" asked Greg. "He's a carpenter," replied Marci. "That's his workshop." "What do you mean?" "He creates all kinds of things from wood. Come on, I'll show you." Marci led Greg to the workshop. Marci opened the door. The buzzing was louder and a fog of dust hovered in the air. It smelled like new pencils. Marci's dad was sanding a wooden chair. When he noticed a sunbeam move across the room, he turned off the sander. "Wow, you made all this stuff out of wood," Greg announced. "Come on in, I'll show you around," said Mr. Opal. "It all starts with a tree." Mr. Opal pointed to a chart on the wall that displayed different types of trees. Every tree variety provides a different type of wood and purpose. Some trees are difficult to work with and some are easier. The type of tree I select depends on what I want to create with the wood. "Would you two like to make something today?" asked Marci's dad. "I've never made anything out of wood," Greg said. "What should we make?" Marci asked. "Well," said Mr. Opal, "my first wood project was a toolbox. A box has many uses, so we'll start there." Mr. Opal opened the drawer of his cedar desk, slid out 2 sheets of grid paper, and handed 1 sheet to Marci and 1 to Greg. "Now that we have an idea of what to build, we need a plan. Think of something you enjoy doing that will fit in your box," Mr. Opal suggested. "I would like a box for my art supplies," Greg said. "I need a box for my journal and treasures," Marci said. "Okay," said Mr. Opal. "Using the grid paper, figure out how big you want your toolbox. Each square on the paper represents 1 inch. Show all the details, including the length, width, and height measurements. Do you want a tray or dividers? Do you need a handle to carry it with, or a latch to secure it?" Marci and Greg each grabbed a pencil out of the pine pencil holder, sat down at the oak table, and started to draw their own boxes. When I made my first toolbox with my father, he told me to pick out the wood I wanted to use. When I selected the wood, he said I had chosen wood that came from an apple tree. He said the only way fruit would grow in my toolbox was if it was pollinated. Only then would the fruits of my labor overflow. Greg and Marci stopped drawing to listen. I remember looking at him confused, the way you two are looking at me now. My father explained that the magic ingredient for my future was pollinating my toolbox. Then the blossoms would turn into fruit to be harvested later for a good use. Marci and Greg looked at each other quizzically. Mr. Opal smiled and continued. I figured out what he meant. The lesson was that self-pollination is like gathering tools to gain knowledge. I had to figure out if I wanted to be a carpenter by researching that career, considering my options, and then learn by working with wood to prepare myself for my future. Think about this, said Mr. Opal. Why do you go to school? Because I have to, Greg sighed. Marci agreed and added, and to learn things. Did you know education is part of collecting tools for your toolbox? Asked Mr. Opal. Everyone who attends school receives the same information. Some kids pay attention and study harder than other kids. It's all about how you look at education and the opportunity to learn. Mr. Opal pulled up a stool made from walnut wood. You attend school so you can figure out who you are and to search for things you find interesting and might enjoy doing when you're older. If you set your mind to it, you can learn anything. Look at Grandpa's life. All these years he's worked on a tree farm because he enjoys it. Grandpa is 74 years old and graduated from high school when he was 18. Wow, that's a long time doing the same thing, Greg said. What do you think of school now? Asked Mr. Opal. Marci and Greg sat back in their chairs, not knowing how to reply. Marci, what do you like most about school? Asked her dad. Spending time with my friends, Marci replied cheerfully. What do you want to study? He clarified. I want to be a farm teacher, Marci said. What do you need to know to be a farm teacher? Well, said Marci, I guess I need to know a lot about farming and be able to talk in front of kids. If you're serious about wanting to be a farm teacher, then you need to study harder in those areas now, said her dad, when you're young. Greg, what do you like most about school? Mr. Opal asked. I don't like school. I don't understand why I have to learn stuff I'm not interested in. Focus on the meaning of your education, Greg. Teachers give you a lot of information. What you do with it is your choice. You want to make a toolbox for your art supplies, right? Said Mr. Opal. Greg nodded yes. Is art something you would like to do as a career? Maybe. I never really thought about it. My favorite class is art, answered Greg. That's a great start. Next you can research your options to discover what you can do with an education in art, replied Mr. Opal. Let's look at school this way, suggested Mr. Opal. Imagine school is a large field with many varieties of seeds mixed together, like all the kids on the playground at recess. Some seeds stay in the field of the unknown, like the kids who don't know what they want to do. Some seeds know where they want to go and are transplanted in orchards. Other seeds just drift wherever the wind blows them. For example, they could land on a beach and grow into a beach apple tree. Beach apples can taste good at first, but they usually end up leaving a bad aftertaste. Teachers provide the seeds of knowledge, and families and communities are like the water and sunshine that are necessary for seeds to grow. They all hope to celebrate a great harvest when you graduate from high school, explained Mr. Opal. As you advance with your education, it's like the different seasons. Elementary school is like spring, when trees are young and rapidly growing. Teachers work on strengthening your roots, so you're well grounded. These are the years when you learn the basics, rules, responsibilities, respect, and good habits. Junior high school is like summer, when fruit trees expand their branches and blossom. During these years, beware of pesticides, like hanging out with the wrong kids and being influenced by peer pressure. Organic and being natural is more inviting, so be wise and be yourself. Senior high school is like fall, when trees display their growth and colors and prepare for the harvest, graduation from high school. The years after high school are like winter, when trees absorb the nutrients they gained and prepare for the new seasons to come. During this time, you might attend college or trade school or become an apprentice. Think about the boxes you're going to build today. It started with an idea, then you made a plan with a purpose in mind. Your boxes will help guide you throughout the changing seasons. Marci and Greg were speechless as Mr. Opal stood up and returned to the wooden chair to continue sanding it. Greg sat in silence, thinking, as he looked around the workshop. Growing up with his single mother, he moved a lot. He had never thought about the meaning of school before, he just went. He had never considered what he might do when he grew up. He took a deep breath to focus on his drawing in his special box. Mr. Opal looked at Marci and Greg. They were showing their blueprints to each other. Are we ready to build toolboxes? Mr. Opal's voice echoed from across the room. Marci and Greg held up their drawings. Ready! Their voices rang with excitement. This is where the magic begins, said Mr. Opal as he walked toward them and looked at their drawings. Aha! You both have your own ideas, he announced. What kind of wood should we use? Asked Marci's dad. I want apple wood, Marci announced. He walked over to the wood bin, pulled out a board of apple wood, and laid it on the work table. Why'd you choose apple wood, Marci? Marci just smiled at her dad. What kind of wood do you want to use, Greg? Greg was looking at the tree chart on the wall. I like this one. He pointed to the chestnut tree. Oh, that is a beauty. Mr. Opal patted Greg's shoulder, walked to the wood bin, pulled out a board of chestnut, and laid it on the other side of the work table. School is like this wood, Mr. Opal said. If you choose to slap something together quickly, just to get it done, it does not have much value. However, if you put your heart into your education, it will give you a sense of pride for what you accomplish, and you will appreciate it more. To avoid making mistakes, we'll measure twice and cut once. Then we won't have wasted our time or any material. Marci and Greg measured and marked all the pieces they needed according to their blueprints, twice. Mr. Opal stood behind them to watch. Mr. Opal cut Greg's board first. Greg collected his wood pieces and arranged them on the nearby workbench, then returned to watch as Marci's board became puzzle pieces. Marci gathered her wood pieces and arranged them on the opposite side of the workbench. Let's find some reinforcements for your boxes. Mr. Opal led Marci and Greg to a rack of bins in search of perfect handles, hinges, and latches. Mr. Opal also collected sandpaper, glue, and screws. Then he showed Marci and Greg how to assemble their toolboxes step by step. Sanding, gluing, screwing, and more sanding. Working together, they attached latches, hinges, and handles. Marci and Greg examined their boxes, proud of what they had each built. Look at what you created with your own purpose in mind. Just remember to focus on the present and work towards something bigger, Mr. Opal said. Wait, something's missing, announced Greg. I'll be back. Greg returned with his art bag, pulled out some markers, and drew a branch with blossoms on the outside of his toolbox. Marci's dad smiled. Thank you, Mr. Opal. This box will help me focus on my future, Greg said as he arranged his art supplies in his new toolbox. Now I understand the meaning of my education and what I need to do to pollinate my toolbox. Thank you, Dad. Marci gave her dad a hug. The end. And now it's review time with Cait. That's me. Wow, I thought that book was absolutely toolrific. Or, to use my friend Farmer Day's word, it was farmtastic. This book, like not the last one, but a couple episodes ago, we had Behind the Barn Door, which was written by the same author, Sheffer. That book won an award, and so did this book, actually. It won the Living Now Book Awards as well. Books for Better Living. Well-deserved, I'd say. I thought it was super educational. I learned a lot. I don't know a whole lot about tools and farming or anything, so that's awesome. I thought it was really good how they talked about the importance of an education, how important it is to invest and plan for your future. Great book. If you want to win your very own copy of this book, all you need to do is comment below. I also like to comment, and on my next episode, I'll announce the winner. Speaking of winners, if you want to hear who won Duck, Duck, Two Pigs Got Stuck, make sure that you stick around until after the credits. I'll be announcing the winner of this book. Also, I want you guys to all make sure that you like and subscribe so that you can see all of my future episodes, including my next episode. Thank you so much for watching Storytime with Cait. That's me! And the winner of Duck, Duck, Two Pigs Got Stuck is Autumn Merrill! Woohoo! Way to go, Autumn!